I'm Kerrie Penney, and you're listening to Secret Heart Broadcasting. Welcome to Secret Heart Broadcasting, and I am so thrilled to have Sarah Woods here today as we have what I hope will be a deep conversation about the realm of the heart. Sarah and I met years ago when you were on the cusp of one adventure and I was on the cusp of another. And even though we didn't know each other well, we had what the term you would use, a bond of affection. And I'm just thrilled that we stayed connected over the years. And here you are in my city, although you live nowhere near Canada now, to talk about the heart. I've learned so much from you about following your heart. Do you want to just, what are we talking about when we're talking about heart and wisdom of the heart?
Well, actually, first thing I'd love to say is we actually met 18 years ago, and it was in the recording studio when I was a student with Encana. So it was 2006, which I'm not sure if you remember, but you gave me really important advice. And that is never to drink coffee with cream in it before you record.
Oh, I was giving out my advice even then. That's bad for your throat.
It's bad for your throat.
Yeah.
So I was a student, and that was our first meeting.
So we met 18 years ago, which seems crazy. I remember right before pandemic, our paths had crossed.
Yeah.
And the world was about to change. You were on your way overseas, I think. And we'd had every time I run into you, I feel like we have these moments of just intense connection. And then we move out of each other's lives. Yeah. Is that heart?
Well, if we go back to the term bonds of affection,
okay,
which is I got that from a series of books that I love, Hope, Love, Give by Gates McKibben. And Grace, the main character, talks about her bond of affection with her beloved Luke. And what that means is a true connection between you and your connection to pure love, your connection to your source. And so we could say that the technology of heart houses that connection. And so that bond of affection between us, it comes from me being really connected to my heart and you being really connected to your heart. And our collaboration, it comes and goes as is required for, I would say, the positive future we're both here to usher in. And so whether we are working together like we are right now, or perhaps there's a lot of listeners today that are connected in with their heart and their frequency of pure love. We're working together. We're in this unseen collaboration right now that really kicked into high gear in 2020.
Mm-hmm. When people had to spend a lot of time alone.
Yeah, a lot of time alone with their technology of heart, with their technology of being, and anything that might come up as a block or as an issue between you and that true space of being, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the world shut down. Any distraction or other source that you are relying on, whether that be your job to get away from your family, right? Or the distraction to keep you away from any personal issues. When the world shut down, we couldn't run away from those things that were happening in our lives that were keeping us away from our source connection.
I'm so happy to talk, and I don't want to spend all our time talking about pandemic time, but I'm happy to refer back to that because I think the world has moved on as if that didn't happen. But in fact, you know, this enormous thing has happened, this enormous shift has happened, or things have been buried, or like something happened then.
Okay, for me personally, 2020, my awareness was, I'm here for this. This is why I came. I am here for this. Thank God it's here, because there had been many times in my life where I questioned, I thought I came here for a great purpose, and it's really against the so-called norm. And so when 2020 happened, I felt the change that I knew I was here for. It, like we were in it. And so I think since then, all the unseen work that you've done, that I've done, that many women around the world have done, led us to that year 2020. And since then, the last 4 years, we've accelerated. We've changed our frequency. We've let go of a lot of the old world. And in that, we've opened up to what's new. And what I would say is new, or is the positive future, is that led by our technology of heart.
I have really admired where you've always followed your intuition or your heart. You left your job. You had a job at in a corporate communication group. That was it was a great job. And I remember we were at a party and you said, "Hey, I'm quitting and I'm going to go travel the world." And I loved that.
I've always known I came here for great purpose. And so I've always tried to live in that purpose that's not always made sense from a practical or a logical point of view, because I'm always listening to that personal manual inside of my technology of heart. So it's very specific instructions for me. And yeah, I came here with that purpose to not only live that way, but also facilitate and lead that new way.
So can you talk about listening to that voice, that what I would call secret heart, trusting it, following it? How do you learn to do that?
It's not so much a learning, it's natural. Like, this is who we came here to be. I just happen to maybe be a bit more advanced in the technology. So from my point of view, there's nothing to fix, there's nothing wrong with us. But we really have to be connected in with our technology of heart, in with that source of pure love as the source or the fuel for the expression that we be. And it happens here's a really good example, or I tried a somewhat practical example. When I was 16, every week on a Tuesday, I would go visit this woman named Jan. She lived at an abbey field. And I would visit with her and talk with her, and it was just this really beautiful exchange friendship. And one day after school, it was not a Tuesday, I was just about to get on the bus. Like, literally, foot was about to step onto the bus, and I turned and I walked towards Jan. I didn't, my foot did it before my mind could even catch up to what I was doing. It was just this very natural, this is what I'm doing. And I walked in to see Jan, and she was sitting at the communal table. Her head was down. And I said, "Hey, Jan, how are you?" And she looked up, and she had a tear rolling down her face. And she said to me, "I asked God for a miracle today, and here you are." So Jan was living with a lot of depression. She was really lonely. And our time together was a beautiful exchange of energy. But that's the technology of heart in action, is that we make these choices, not necessarily understanding why, but because we're hooked into that frequency of pure love, it connects in with that highway of love, I guess. And so sometimes it happens right away, and in other times we're leaving breadcrumbs, right? So our breadcrumbs began in 2006 in a recording studio, and here we are 18 years later. Who knew? Collaborating on this conversation, and we could say that it was a breadcrumb that we both left for each other.
So when we're talking about heart, would you use the word soul or light or love? Are there other words that are synonyms for what you speak about when you speak about heart? I don't know if that's a fair question, but I know, like, before I met you, I would have said trust your gut, or my spirit's talking, or my intuition.
Right. Yeah. So I think this is a really important conversation to have, because, and this is why I use the word technology and like the physical aspect of us. The gut is a really important aspect of our technology, but it is an arm of the heart, if so to speak. Do you know what I mean? So it's really valuable, and our body is a really important aspect of the technology of us being here, being this pure love in action. But the heart, that pure love frequency, it's what connects us with universal law, the principles of nature here on earth. And so it's this really important alignment. And so when we're connected in with pure love through that heart, there is that really strong alignment. With the gut, well, is it your stomach ache, right? What dis-ease is there? And so it's the heart is a really precise technology that we are in the midst of remembering and aligning with.
And different from mind, from tuning into mind.
Yeah, and that comes back to Grace and the bonds of affection that we spoke about at the beginning, is that her, and you'll have to read the story if any of this,
Here's a book. Here's a book recommendation.
Yeah, if any of this aligns for you. I just love the story of these two that come together over 4 different lifetimes. And I'm experiencing this right now in my own personal life with my beloved. At any time I want to reach out to him, or to another source. I'm getting further away from my own heart. And so when Grace talks about her bonds of affection, it's really about her being in her source connection, and it's through that gateway, that drop into heart, that she can become closer to Luke. Or at least that's how I understand it. And I live my own life.
So being aligned with yourself, not leaning out.
Yeah, and so that first connection is with you and your pure love, and then the collaboration begins. So anyone listening here today, the reflection back would be anything that we say here goes through your source. You've got to tune into you first before you listen to that advice or counsel, because then it becomes a collaboration when we go through our own heart connection first.
You've basically traveled the world learning from spiritual teachers, and it's your journey, it's your story, but this has all been dictated not by head that says, oh, I need to, I must, but following something.
Well, I've certainly had my own battles and purification with the mind or other sources. My story, like the story, begins like way before I was born. And so 10 years before I was born, my dad was working in British Columbia on a mountain, and a big boulder came sliding toward him. He was working by himself on this construction site. There were men around him, but not close enough to help him. And he didn't have time to move. So he fell onto his back. And as he would tell this story, the ground moved to cradle him. So he was cradled by the earth, and this huge boulder slid down and pinned him. So it didn't squish him, but pinned him underground, and he floated above his body. And what's up, what some would describe as a near-death experience.
Right.
And I was greeted by, as he would say, light beings. And so there are these light beings saying, you have to get into your body. You've got to go back. You're going to have a daughter. She's going to come with purpose, with gifts. And so you have a really important role to play in that by being her father. And so he looked down. He could see everyone trying to get him out of this situation. So he chose to come back into his body. I think it was about 2 hours later in Earth time. And then 10 years or more, I don't know, more or less, I was born. And so I have a remembering of that time-space coordinate of being there, and that I came here with great purpose.
And your dad told you this story?
Yeah. My dad and I speak about this story quite often. And he had a great uncle, or no, it would be my great uncle. His uncle was very, very well studied in esoteric teachings. He was clairvoyant, and had a grasp of being multidimensional. So my dad had someone to talk to about the experience, to bring context. And so, that's where it all began for me, is this great purpose. But then there's this huge purification that goes along with it, of letting go, of dismantling the old, of the fears, of the blocks, of the ancestral baggage. So a big part of that travel was never about seeking. It was really never ever about so-called learning in that old way. It was really about a dropping of what was never me to begin with, but I came here to be part of the purification of. And so as I say that, what I'm saying is that we are in this big transition, and some would say we're leaving an old world and we're entering a new world. And that happens because of you, me, all these men and women who decide to do that purification within them, which was upholding an old dysfunctional world, so that the heart can lead in this new space, in this new world that we are collaborating for.
I just think about my work with you, and you helped me. In full disclosure, Sarah and I were friends and colleagues, and then at some point this year, we connected, and my mom died 4 years ago, and I had a really powerful grief story about my mom. And I feel like, I've handled this so well. And I'm modeling what it is to be grieving. And I'm showing people not to be afraid of their emotions. Right. And tears. And somehow that was my story. My story was about grieving my mom and then what? I think I was curious about, and then what happened. So, yeah. And you really helped me kind of let go of that piece. And I wasn't like, oh yes, I need to let go of this. There's a fear in letting go of, does this mean, how will I be in the world? Does this mean I let go of loving my mom? Does this mean I become something that people can't understand? Does this mean, I'm letting go of my mind and trusting my heart? A word I would use, would be intuition around that. But the change was not, it wasn't like, oh, I can hardly wait to let go of my old ancestral baggage and become bright in the world. I was doing everything I could to cling on to it.
Right.
It was frightening without it.
Totally. And I would say that let's just say old world, new world.
Okay.
To make
old
it
world,
really
new world.
Easy. In the old world, it was in a way controlled, created, sometimes manipulated through emotions and through thought. And so there's nothing wrong with the story or having these emotions. But like you said, if we grab onto the story and we make it the identity, we miss out on that true expression, that true operating manual of who we came here to be.
Yeah, so when we talk about an operating manual, does that mean that we all have this purpose?
Yeah, just to be our expression of pure love. I mean, it can be that simple. Do you know what I mean? So new leadership is not about the top or about the big following. It's about being that expression of pure love, which is going to show up in many different ways. And that's great purpose. The pure love is the pure purpose. And we've all got a role to play so that when we're all connected in, it's this highway. Like Jan and I, we were connected in that day on the same highway, that same frequency. And it's like big love. It's that, that expression that just grows and has ripple effects that we may never know about.
As you're speaking, I'm reminded of that image, and I've spoken about this before. It's kind of gross, but heart cells on a petri dish from different hearts.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So the heart beats outside of, the heart cell has its own electricity.
Yeah. And
different heart cells in the petri dish will sync up. They'll be vibrating separately, and then they will all sync up.
Cool.
And I just, as you're, and I'm thinking maybe that's the way forward in the world as the collective, as if we all kind of sync up together. Yeah.
That's the light. I would say the light of that which we be. So pure love, we are the light of that which we already are, that pure love. And all of our expressions are going to be totally different. And sometimes we might not understand each other. It might look totally opposite, whatever it might be, but we're still hooked into that pure love frequency where we are sourcing through love, not something or someone else.
Do you get a lot of people saying, I don't understand what you mean, or this is too out there for me, or...
18 years ago when I met you, yes. Everyone, yes. That's why 2020, I was like, whew, I'm here for this. And I think it was about 2 weeks into what we call the pandemic. And I was like, okay, time's up. Let's go, people. Like, catch up. Now, 4 years later, this is, we're on the lip of greater understanding. And so there might not be understanding. And that's usually what the mind or this old technology will catch us up in, is how and why.
Mm-hmm. Those are my next two questions.
Right, which is not really helpful. How and why. It doesn't matter. Like, who did you come here to be? What is that expression? All that really matters is letting go of anything that doesn't allow you to be it. And so in the work that we did together, even this broadcast or what you write, you're going to pull from all those really unique experiences with your mom and what you shared. But it's through your expression and that inherent wisdom that you're here to be. It's through that lens that you pull in those experiences. Those experiences don't define who Kerrie is. Mm-hmm. And so really it's just re-education. It's having these conversations that start creating a different dialogue for that bright, here's what I'm here for, a really positive future, a bright future. And so that's really important when I collaborate with people or when I have conversations. Are we on the same page? Do we both want a positive future? And if so, then the collaboration can begin.
I love that idea of that it comes from yourself, that we are the source, first and foremost, And one of the things that helped me kind of understand that in a tangible way, in a way that didn't feel like, oh, it's too esoteric and I can't possibly, and I don't know how, was actually writing what I was really thinking, giving myself space to write what I was really thinking, which is interesting because I can write, for years I wrote, corporate and educational things. So I can speak many languages, but to actually sit with what it is I believe, what am I telling me? And I think that's when I started to realize, I loved radio. And I think earlier in my career, and whether it's a function of being 20 or the times or whatever, I didn't really speak my voice at the time. I tried to make myself the voice of the most pleasing voice. Yeah, the voice I thought I should be. Yeah. And I would say that wasn't very aligned with who I really am. So I don't know if that's a function of, is that a function of age or?
I would actually, there's so many ways to talk about this, but let's go this direction you were aligned. You were exactly where you were supposed to be. We're in this huge transition, this huge change, and it doesn't happen just like it happens in one moment, but it also happens in the collaboration, right? So you were a game changer then, right? You did things that women weren't doing, perhaps. You made one small choice that opened up or was a ripple of change. Yeah, sure. So everything isn't exactly the way it is now. But again, going back to those breadcrumbs.
Oh, so leaving clues about who you are or where you're going.
We have such an culture of instant gratification right now. Mm-hmm. And that can create a lot of wrongness around who you are or what you're doing. We have to remember, like, if you're listening to the technology of heart, whether you get feedback or not right away, it's not important because you're just listening to that manual. And so you were listening to your manual, and then you gather more life experience through that manual, and then we're letting go of more things, which opens up to what is now Secret Heart Broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And now you're mentoring, an incredible production team that's helping you, but you're also helping them from all this really incredible experience you have as an OG in the space. So I would say you were in alignment, but geez, could your nervous system handle letting it all go at one? Like, no.
Well, yeah, I think that's true. And I think in talking to the women I know, the fear of being seen is that there's a like, lights popping up and then retreating, because if you speak your truth or you want to be seen, people will have feelings about it, and that can feel scary.
It totally can feel scary, especially for those who are in tune with their multidimensional gifts or highly sensitive. But we are in a time right now where we have no choice but to have a voice. We have to be in integrity with our heart. And so if you can't say what you feel, then you've got to do your work so that you can say what you feel. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I get it. It's scary. But you got to do the work to let go of those aspects that aren't allowing you to be that true manual of heart. And I think it's really important right now, because we're in a time where if we don't speak our truth, freedoms, sovereignty, right now is a choice. We have free will on this planet. We want to be a guardian for that positive future where that choice is honored. And so we need to be those strong voices. So yes, I get it's scary, but if you want to ask, like, how do you listen to your heart? Look at the places that really scare you, the fear that comes up, and deal with those personal issues so that you create a space for the heart to speak really loudly. Because it is a very, like some people, as you ask, like it can sound really esoteric, really woo-woo, mostly because it kind of frightens people. It's the so-called unknown. But the truth is, this technology of heart is very specific. It's very exact. It's very clear. It's not difficult to be who we came here to be. It's like we came here to be these beautiful expressions. It's like a little child, right? If we ask a 4 or 5-year-old, what are you drawing? They know what they're drawing, but they don't know yet. I don't know. I'll let you know when I'm done. Right? But they have a trust because it's like this blank canvas. It's who we came here to be. So the so-called work, or what some people would think of, I need to fix myself, is actually a letting go and a transmutation, a purification of what's not actually who we are.
I love that image of the little child.
Yeah.
And many women I've talked to have said, oh, I was, I remember myself at 9. I remember myself at 6. There was something, I used to do this, and that became a touchstone in their adult life to get back to whatever the truth was about being 6 or 9 or whatever. Do you think is that a breadcrumb?
Yeah, children are just really close to that remembering. And so as a guardian of the heart, we want to hold that matrix for children. No one held that matrix for us, right? Mm-hmm. No one held it for me. I don't know about you, but it's not the norm right now. It's why we're here having this conversation. It's because it needs to become the norm, because it is the norm. So holding that matrix of heart for little children, so that they know their true source, so that they know how to come home to themselves, and allowing them to build that trust in a world that goes against it, is what paves a way for that really positive future. So yeah, the breadcrumbs are in childhood, and coming back to that spirit of being. That true heart is really important.
And I think just in my own experience, where we want to keep children safe. I think that becomes, so to be safe, please fit in. To be safe, get a job, even if it's not what you love. Get a job that allows you to, the choices you make to be safe or to thrive, and put your spiritual work off to, I don't know, the weekend.
Well, I guess that's the old world.
As I'm saying it, it's like, oh yeah, that.
I mean, there's no part of me talking about the technology of the heart that is saying, don't take care of your bills and don't be responsible. There's a balance there. And so anyone I've worked with that is doing something they don't really want to do is typically miserable. There's dis-ease coming up, and they've created a distance between them and who they really be.
Who have you worked with? And you don't need to name names, but I think maybe that's one thing we missed at the beginning of the podcast is, you're not alone in the wilderness kind of shining your light.
I work with incredibly big hearts, often very multidimensional, highly sensitive beings that are here. I would say new leadership. In the old world, they have titles of CEO or executive. They also have titles of entrepreneur or mother. Again, my collaborations always come back to are we here for that positive future? So I work with people on kind of all different levels, but what's most important is that we are here to strengthen that positive future, and that in the collaboration I offer a space for them to come more deeply into their connection to pure love, and to understand what I would say is their technology of being. Because being very multidimensional, having this body, being here on earth, it can be a bit of a trip. And these are tools or a way of being that is of the future. So we're learning to live and create and be in this higher frequency. And so there's some really practical ways I help people be in their body.
Do you want to share a practical way?
Well, coming back, and a lot of people don't understand when they're not in their body.
Well, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in my head.
Yeah, in your head, or and I know we've joked before as friends of sometimes you need someone to grab your foot and put you down on the ground, especially creatives and being in these energies. But one way that you can do a little pulse check, are you in your body, is do you have weight gain, or do you have weight loss, or do you have trouble making choices? Are you sometimes spinny, asking other people for help or to answer questions for you? These are all little check marks in, are you in your body? And because once you're in your body and fully aligned with that physicality, you've got the space to listen to that heart, that true operating system.
I think for much of my life, I dismissed my body. I was like, okay, I need my head to get ahead and my body will follow, and I'm not going to take particular great care of my body. I'm not going to abuse it either. But
after I quit my corporate job, I spent some time in Chile. Well, one of those, follow my heart. I ended up in Chile, and I started working with a woman who's really important to me. Her name is Lodo. And one day she asked me to draw my body. So I got out pencil and I drew a huge heart, and I didn't want to give myself legs and feet. I just really wasn't interested in it. And so I put it as an afterthought. I drew my legs and my feet. And she came over. And Lodo speaks primarily Spanish. My Spanish was terrible at the time. So a lot of this was energetic. A lot of it was telepathic. But she said a few words to me is, what happened to your feet? She says, you cannot be here on this planet if you're not fully in your body. Your legs and your feet are very important. And so a lot of the work I did with her was coming back into my body. Sometimes in the form of meditation. We meditated twice a day, a form of Buddhist meditation. I did a lot of Ayurvedic massage, a lot of baths, a lot of walking meditations. So a lot of being in the silence and the peace of heart. And if I couldn't be in the peace of heart, I had to look at what was coming up to be transmuted.
And there's the work.
That's the work. Yeah. There's no that's the unseen work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really uncomfortable. It's rarely pretty. I remember I had one moment of meditation. I was so angry. I was so angry. I was so pissed off at the world. I was pissed off at the wall I had to look at. I was pissed off at my hips because they were sore. And, that surge of anger just came up through me like a volcano. And it had to come up. And I had to release the pressure. But I had to be in that space, in that moment where I gave the anger in my body an opportunity to be in honor of what was there for it to be transmuted. And we can't do that if we're distracted, if we're giving away our sovereignty to other sources, even just our cell phone. Mm-hmm. We've got to carve out that space of being so that we can be in that true technology of heart. And so that's coming back into the body is a big part of that.
So and we're not distracted from who we are.
Yeah. And in this work, it's like you come back to the same thing over and over again in a deeper way, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so that is just so classic with myself and with the women I work with, is often there's a fear of that power, like a fear of the love that we actually be. And then the opposite of that would be not a commitment, almost like an addiction to a lack of self-love. Man, if we can transmute that, this is going to be a really different world.
What are the benefits of actually paying attention, dropping into yourself, listening to your heart, letting go?
The magic of life. That's the benefit. I don't even think it's a benefit. It's just that's the way it's supposed to be. And I don't want this to be confused with everything is always great. That's not the case. But we that alignment is the benefit, because you're in your body and you're experiencing, and you can be love in action. This is love in action right now. This is imagine if everyone was love in action in what they created and how they be.
So they could create, I know for me, I would say I've created this podcast came, I think, as a direct response to tuning into my heart and what I'm calling my secret heart broadcasting.
Yeah.
So, so I mean that's and it's risky. I don't know where this is going to go. It's fulfilling in the moment. I get to have great conversations with women who light me up.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's some resonance.
Yeah.
It vibrates at a frequency that is, that people listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's been how I've experienced the work. It sounds like this so hedgy, doesn't it? The work. But all it is sitting and being okay with yourself, loving yourself.
Well, we're just in this big transition. So everything is messy, right? Everything is messy. And some of the stuff we're talking about is a pivot from, it's completely new from the old world. But I would say it's a return to the truth of pure love. And so it's messy. We're figuring it out. There's nothing to figure out. It's just listening to that operating manual and being that action in a new way. And we make a new choice, and you just make a new choice again. And so it's very different than having a logical, planned out strategy from the mind. And listen, I work with women who are tackling global issues, raising capital, difficult board meetings, stressful investor meetings. You have to still have a strategy. That's part of the bridge into the new world. But we're beginning to see that a lot of those old ways, they just don't work anymore. So you have to be willing to drop the old and be willing to trust in what that unseen manual is telling you to do. And it might not work out the way you think. It usually doesn't. And that doesn't always mean it's going to be so-called positive for you. You know, there's an alignment. There's the principles of nature here on Earth. Sometimes volcanoes erupting is devastating.
I feel like sometimes I can hear heart, like music really can help me get to this place of heart. Yeah. There's some beautiful, for me, classical music is really, so it feels like it's new work, but it must be old knowing, because, 200 years ago, people writing classical music weren't having a discussion about heart and head. They were
being it. Yeah. I don't think this is anything new. I don't think this is my first, and I've been around the cosmic block. This isn't my first rodeo when it comes to the technology of heart. So I don't think it's anything new, but it needs to return to this planet, and we've got to I think we need to take this really seriously. We've got some really devastating things happening on the planet. The heart is part of that formula for the positive future, for some of those things transmuting and ending.
How can one person change the world?
Well, in everything that we've discussed today, really, because the breadcrumbs, your one little choice, it's seemingly little choice, is part of the puzzle piece. It's like the orchestra, right? We're all part of the orchestra. There's no song. The song is a bit lonely, right? We've got the orchestra. We're all playing. And when we're in tune with our own heart, and then it becomes really beautiful, right?
I love the idea of affirming kindness and compassion and love in life.
Yeah.
That's not separate from us. That's not viewed as weak. That is in fact essential. Kindness is essential. I love that. That feels very aligned with who I know me to be.
Yeah. Well, I think I agree with you, but I in my own experience, and certainly with the women I work with, that kindness and compassion we've got to bring to ourselves first. And we have to be for ourselves first. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the deepening of the connection with the true heart, with the source. It's like really being in that first, because there's programming, there's ancestral baggage, there's all of these factors that has created patterning within women, within the land that we walk on going outside of ourselves, helping others before ourselves. And so we are reversing that in this purification and in this claiming of our true heart, because we know when we listen to the manual of heart, it's an alignment. It's an unseen frequency with somebody maybe on the other side of the world, and that we are working together, whether we know it or not, for that positive future. And it could be at the so-called expense of people around us, but that's not because we're doing something to someone else, but because we're participating in this great shift, which is going to be ugly, which means there's going to be letting go, there's going to be a release. And so if we're in a space where we are coddling or worrying about others from our own wounds, we're not in that true heart space, and we're not truly being that pure love frequency for the really positive future, even though we think we are because we're being nice. I think it's really healthy for us to all be asking the question, okay, what can I do and be right now? The world it's getting really ugly here. It is really ugly, right? So we've got to ask those questions of what contribution can I be? I think for women, we're moving out of this phase where we always did things at the expense of ourselves for other people. And what that did is it created a barrier between us and our hearts. So we've got to have that true connection to our heart in order to be that greatest contribution to other people. What I am encouraging is to really activate inside of you that connection to pure love, what really truly lights you up. And so for me, I was preparing to quit my corporate job. I was in Chile on a vacation to go skiing, and I was out on the coast and on a sand dune in Concon, and I was watching the sunset. And as the sun set, I could feel my heart. It's like the sun is setting and my heart were in tune on this frequency. You can feel it now. And it was just like, that was my reminder of home. That was a reminder of pure love. That was a reminder of purpose. And that what lights me up was really a big part of that next choice, to quit my corporate job, to take a leap into the unknown. And so I like the question, what lights you up? Because it helps bring you closer to that connection to source.
And then it's up to, because some people might say, well, I can't, because I've done that. Oh, I can't do that. That does light me up, but I can't do that because I have this responsibility, or I can't quit my job, or, but you're saying, listen and follow it.
There's probably something that you've avoided doing because of fear. It's a really great place to start. So look at the places within you that are scaring you, not to pick apart, not to dissect. And listen, some people might need to do that. Therapy might be the right route for you. You might need some trauma work. Like, I'm not saying don't do any of that, but in the context of this, you got to look at those things that are silencing you, not to understand it, but to let it go. You know, and if you have to understand it, then that's part of your learning. That might be part of your therapy. And then there's an aspect like what we were talking about earlier of really putting the story in the correct setting so that the heart can take the lead.
So I need to change my life. I'm not sure how to do it. Just listen more.
Can you sit for 2 minutes in silence without your phone? I mean, it's a really good litmus test, right? And so what we're leaving is that era of gurus where we're making choices or making purchases or following someone or something else. And the new world is follow the leader, you are the leader. And then we're in really conscious collaborations because you've got this experience, I have this experience. And together the collaboration, again, is for that really positive future.
How is it different living when you're trusting your heart?
I'll give you a personal example. In 2015, I wanted to go somewhere and write. I just knew I was going somewhere to write. I looked on a map and I was like, Sri Lanka. I think I want to go to Sri Lanka. I had all this experience with Lodo doing Ayurvedic massage. I loved it. I'm going to go to Sri Lanka. And as I was looking for a place to stay, all I could see was Anthony Bourdain on a layover in Sri Lanka. It was like he was hot, he was sick, he had no fun. And it was just, not that has to be the experience, but it was like, no, this is not where you're going. So I just clicked on the map and I clicked on a really small, because I asked the book, okay, where am I writing you? And I clicked on the map, a small village in the south of Spain, in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Found a little cortijo, wrote to the woman. I said, I want to come and write. I want to create a space for myself. She said, this is the perfect place, and I'm a writer too. I didn't know much about the place. Instagram wasn't like a thing for me. I just went. I got on a bus, and I ended up in this small mountain village. Things unfolded seemingly for me. I met some incredible people quite magically, and a friend of mine who I just met within days of being there, he took me to a party for a soccer team. So I was like tucked into the mountain in a place that you would never find, you know, off limits to anyone other than those who knew about it. And it was this huge party, abuelas, kids, everyone having a barbecue for the soccer team. And one of Juan's friends said to me, he spoke really good English. He was a police officer. He said, "You're alone." And I get that question all the time. You're alone, sola. Yeah, I'm alone. How did you end up here? I said, I followed my heart. No. How did you end up here? I said, well, I knew I could see the stars and I knew it would be magic. So I'm trying to bring words to what I could feel in my heart, which is sometimes really difficult to do. Right?
Yes.
As you're asking me these questions. And he said, we know this. We know the stars are magical. We know it's magical here. How did you know? I said, I listened to my heart. And so it's my operating manual, right? And I've come here with this technology in this space that you also have, where it's just about being intimately aligned with it. We can't be intimately aligned with it if we haven't processed our grief, processed trauma, let go of old patterning, or if we're relying on external sources to live. That's me following my heart. I mean, these are just like the examples of how I end up places.
Well, even now, you live in the south of France.
The same thing. I just followed my heart. I started the year 2019 in the south of France, in this small village. It was a turning point for me in my work because I started looking at my work differently and positioning it differently. And I really, again, working with the unseen, it was like I was working with the land, a very feminine energy there. I didn't know a lot about where I was. I just went there. Upon, that's 5 years ago, I've learned this village is where Matisse and Picasso used to paint. Dali called Perpignan the center of the universe because of a very mystical experience he had there. I mean, there's an alignment there for some of those so-called greats that I'm in alignment with too. And the reason why I'm saying this is because when I would talk with people about Bouillon, they'd say, "Oh, I want to go," and because they could see me light up, they could see how much I was in my expression there.
And Bouillon was the place in Spain.
In the south of Spain. And I could, hang on, you've got to listen to your manual, not mine.
What lights you up?
Right. It's in alignment for me and my operating manual. And so I would say in the south of France, don't go there to paint because Picasso went to paint there. Because you're probably going to paint crappy paintings. Because you're doing it because someone outside of you did it. Do you see what I mean? And so I guess this is like the best way I can describe. If you're wearing, the Nikes because somebody told you to wear the Nikes and you'll win the game. It's like you're so sourcing outside of you from what your true instructions. I'm not even telling you, like, it's just like what you came here to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So only you know.
Only I know.
Only I know.
Exactly.
And I love that question. What's possible?
Yeah. Just letting the mind okay, what's possible? Just asking the question. That first week in Bouillon in 2015, I asked, I wonder what's possible on a hike. And literally at the top of the hike, I met this gorgeous man on a horse, and he helped show me the way to another village. And along the way, he put me on the horse, and I was riding the horse, and he let me stop and eat cherries. And then I ended up meeting a really, really beloved friend who's just been so important to me, along my journey. And that's because I just let the mind go. And I said, I wonder what's possible. Just be open. Let it go. You've got to let go.
Oh, I think that is a great place to end. You've got to let go.
You've got to let go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kerrie.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'll come back and talk anytime.
Oh, please. I wonder what's possible.